Greetings, my fellow peasants. It is my sad duty to explain why our glorious Imperial Air Force is toast. Put simply, it's because manned aircraft are obsolete. Manned aircraft are being replaced by unmanned aircraft. Okay, let's start by remembering what we learned about why aircraft carriers are obsolete in a previous video. Aircraft carriers are obsolete because they are big, slow, and expensive. Very big, slow, and expensive. First, reason number one, manned aircraft are bigger and heavier than unmanned aircraft because manned aircraft are burdened with the additional weight they must carry to house the pilot and to protect the pilot and to eject the pilot. Consider the ejection seat in a parachute, an oxygen supply, and armor plating around the pilot, and whatever it takes to regulate the temperature so the pilot never fries nor freezes. All this extra weight makes manned aircraft bigger and slower and more expensive than unmanned aircraft. And all this extra weight is pushing manned aircraft into the same category of obsolete dinosaurs, just like aircraft carriers. Okay, reason number two. We will consider an even worse factor also pushing manned aircraft into the dinosaur category, and this factor involves a bit of word trickery, so pay close attention. Okay, hypersonic missiles are defined as missiles that travel 5 times the speed of sound or faster. Bear in mind that there are two barriers to manned aircraft that kick in between Mach 4 and Mach 5. As unmanned anti-aircraft missiles speeds have progressed from Mach 1 speed and beyond, not much change for them, but manned aircraft hit their limit at about Mach 4. At about Mach 4, all changes in direction of manned aircraft produce increases in G-forces that the human pilot simply cannot withstand. The human body cannot adjust to abrupt changes because the human body wants to keep going in the same direction, and thus the pilot gets squished against the very straps fastening him to his seat, and high-speed direction changes, and any change in direction much beyond Mach 4 will cause the pilot to lose consciousness. Bye-bye, pilot. Thus, Mach 4 is one real barrier for manned aircraft, and Mach 5 and beyond is and will remain the exclusive domain of unmanned aircraft. The faster a manned aircraft goes, the slower it must turn to avoid pilot loss of consciousness, and the slower it turns, the more vulnerable it becomes to any pursuing unmanned anti-aircraft missiles, because these missiles are just as nimble and maneuverable at lower speeds, while the manned aircraft becomes increasingly less nimble as speed increases. Now keep in mind that manned aircraft can be manufactured that can accelerate to Mach 5 and beyond, but there is no practical reason to do so because the human pilot would be nothing more than a passenger in an unmaneuverable missile with an easily predictable flight path and thus an easy target for any pursuing unmanned anti-aircraft missiles. Beyond Mach 4, you may as well strap a cow in the pilot seat as a man, because beyond Mach 4, both are equally worthless. Also, at about Mach 5 in the atmosphere, a plasma field appears on the nose of any and all aircraft, both manned and unmanned. This glowing plasma is the light you see when looking at videos of missiles raining down on Tel Aviv during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. The hypersonic missiles can be identified by their sudden acceleration and change in direction just before impact. And now we will consider the third reason manned aircraft are now dinosaurs. Pilots cannot react to incoming data as fast as computer-driven systems can, and the faster the speeds involved, the more the gap widens. All incoming data about incoming missiles, such as radar returns and heat data and optical data, are instantly converted into digital data and instantly ran through an onboard computer to produce instantly useful targeting data. The same data is also displayed to the pilot, but this data is not instantly useful because a pilot must first make a decision about what to do, and then the pilot must tell the weapons what to do, usually by pressing some button. Both of these pilot actions take time, which we will assign a combined time of about 1 second to illustrate the problem. In this single second, the tracked missile, if traveling on Mach 5, will have traveled about 1,715 meters, which is just over 1 mile. This situation recalls a scene in the movie Full Metal Jacket, where the helicopter machine gunner is explaining why it's so much easier to shoot women and children. Ha! You just don't have to lead them as much. That's all it boils down to, kiddies. And if you assume a more realistic speed of Mach 15 to the incoming missile, the lead distance is over 3 miles. Now, before we go further, we must understand how the USA got into this lopsided jam. From World War II onwards, the goal of the USA was always to have, quote, air superiority, unquote, which was loosely defined as the ability of USA fighter planes to sweep enough enemy fighter planes from the sky so that USA bombers could drop their bombs on enemy ground targets while suffering only minimal losses. In fact, the USA achieved this air superiority over Berlin and over Tokyo and over the Normandy beaches and over the Japanese ships all over the Pacific Ocean. From World War II onwards, the USA had the best and most air superiority fighter planes due to both better technology and greater manufacturing ability. This concept of air superiority became the foundation of all USA military planning and remained so even when the first cracks in this concept started appearing about in the 1980s. That's when handheld heat-seeking missiles first appeared. These cheap and transportable nasty little varmints robbed the Russian jets of the air superiority they had enjoyed over Afghanistan. These USA-made missiles shot down low-flying jets and helicopters so often that the Russian jets and helicopters abandoned low-flying ground support strikes. But because these new weapons were USA missiles, the lesson was lost, and the USA continued merrily onwards, churning out ever more expensive manned fighters. Why? Okay, the development of stealth aircraft. The ever-increasing edge of maneuverable hypersonic missiles over manned aircraft did not go unnoticed by the intoxicated wizards in the Pentagon. But the wizards were loath to give up their manned aircraft because they could not perceive that the new concept of air superiority simply made their flying cows completely and irreversibly obsolete. So the Pentagon wizards did not develop maneuverable hypersonic missiles of their own, but instead revive their flying cows by making them invisible. About 1990, stealth fighter aircraft began appearing in the USA. These stealth fighters are not fighters at all. They are in fact bombers and have no means of attacking any manned or unmanned aircraft that might be sent against them. So from now on, I'm calling them stealth bombers and flying cows. Currently, the USA has only one operational flying cow, the B-2. All other aircraft, sometimes described as stealth, are just ordinary fighters with some anti-radar features, but not the angular surfaces possessed by the B-2. The flying cow lessens the possibility of being tracked by conventional radar, primarily by using flat surfaces to reflect radar waves away from the radar receiver that is their origin. However, this odd geometry of their surfaces makes stealth aircraft aerodynamically unstable. Very, very, very unstable. To overcome this instability, the stealth aircraft are deliberately reduced in speed even more so that inboard computers can keep them flying by adjusting their flight many times per second. This is yet another example of stripping stealth bombers of their few remaining real advantages to bolster the false perception of invisibility. For instance, once the flying cows are ready to drop their bombs, they open the bomb bay doors, which immediately light up even the most primitive radars, as do the bombs themselves. Thus, they give up their exact positions so that manned aircraft can be dispatched to send them to flying cow heaven. Bye bye, flying cow. And bear in mind that the intercepting aircraft do not have to use radar guided weapons. They can simply track the flying cows visually by observing the jet engine exhaust and then dispatch them with ordinary cannon fire. At this point, the B-2 flying cows are on the menu because they can neither outmaneuver their pursuers or shoot anything at them. And be aware that it's a long way back to the safety of their barns for these B-2 flying cows. They cannot land anywhere, but must have runways to land on, and then very large bunkers to park themselves in. The runways can be cratered by enemy hypersonic missiles, and the bunkers blown completely to bits. And note that the B-2 flying cow has a top speed of about 95% of Mach 1. If it were faster, it would create a sonic boom alerting everyone to its location. So, the B-2 is deliberately built to be slow. The manned fighters sent against them can typically fly from Mach 1 to Mach 2 speeds, and the unmanned anti-aircraft missiles can typically fly from Mach 2 and upwards. Meanwhile, Russia, China, and Iran were looking for a way to end USA air superiority and started manufacturing large numbers of maneuverable hypersonic ground-to-ground missiles. Now we will consider how these hypersonic missiles performed in the so-called 12-day war between Iran and Israel of June the 13th to June the 24th of 2025. In short, the Iranian hypersonic missiles were unstoppable and rained down on Tel Aviv and other Israeli cities, reducing large areas to disaster zones of destroyed buildings, debris-filled streets, demolished power stations, and demolished military facilities, including those deep underground. As for Iran, I saw only one impact of an Israeli old-fashioned ballistic missile or glide bomb or whatever the fuck it was on Tehran. Just one, because no Western nation, including Israel, has operational hypersonic ground-to-ground missiles. They are all still on the drawing boards and probably 2 years or more away from production. I will now explain why Iranian hypersonic missiles were so devastating during the Six-Day War. First, Tel Aviv or any large city is what is called a target-rich environment, and the hypersonic missiles know which targets they are headed for, while any Israeli tracking radars do not. This places a great burden on Israeli radar, which can Guessed only that incoming hypersonics are headed for Tel Aviv, but not the exact target in Tel Aviv. The Israelis could only watch as hypersonics demolish one target after another. The Israelis can shoot down non-hypersonic missiles and drones, but even in this case, the Iranians can overwhelm Israeli defenses with sheer numbers, while the Israelis cannot reply in kind against Tehran because they do not have huge swarms of missiles and drones, because the silly chumps thought that they could intimidate the Iranians and with USA flying cows on the offensive side and their so-called Iron Dome on the defensive side. But the Israelis lost both bets and were in a state of utter shock and had to go begging to the USA to save their stupid, arrogant asses. I don't know what the USA had to do to get the Iranians to cease fire, but you can bet it was substantial and out of public view. As of late February 2026, 2026, it looks like the USA is preparing for a total war with Iran and is sending our obsolete sitting duck aircraft carriers to lead the charge. Oh boy, it's going to be fun. Colonel Ritter has stated that the USA has informed the Iranians that sinking a USA aircraft carrier will instantly get them a nuke in return, while the Iranians have made it clear that they will sink any USA aircraft carriers assisting Israel. Ha ha ha! Well, this sounds like a huge shit sandwich to me, and we will probably see very soon who gets the first big bite. My friends, I predict a total rout of Western forces with USA aircraft carriers sunk or fleeing the area at full speed, and our Western manned aircraft of all types suffering horrific and unsustainable losses. My friends, I'm saying that again. Please remember it. I am predicting a total rout of Western forces with USA aircraft carriers sunk or fleeing the area at full speed, and Western manned aircraft of all types, both USA and Israeli, will suffering horrific and unsustainable losses. Now, my great hope is that Trump will see the light and double-cross the Israelis. But my great fear is that, emboldened by his success against Maduro, that Trump will order an all-out attack on Iran, which will result in an immediate and all-out Iranian attack on both Israel itself and the USA aircraft carriers. Either way, Israel is toast, and so is Netanyahu. So my best guess is that Trump will fold and let surviving Israelis string up Netanyahu themselves before he throws nukes at Iran and a USA aircraft carrier and a false flag attack like another 9/11. Friends, we may have only a month or less before World War III, and the flag-waving, Bible-thumping hillbilly Republicans get us all vaporized. Good luck, amigos, and most likely, goodbye.